Comment with your current financial situation to support prosperity and subscribe to my channel. I'm counting on your help to spread the message of Jewish wealth. Hello, I am Rabbi Aaron Klein, and today I need to share with you a discovery that completely changed my understanding of why good, generous people become financially exhausted after the age of 45. During my 40 years studying the sacred texts and counseling thousands of people in financial distress, I discovered that there is a specific psalm, an ancestral prayer that has remained hidden from most people, which possesses the extraordinary power to drive away those who drain our vital energy and financial resources, creating a spiritual protection that not only preserves our inner peace, but exponentially multiplies our ability to prosper. This revelation came to me unexpectedly when I noticed a devastating pattern repeating itself continuously among those who sought my help. Hardworking, kind men and women, always willing to help family and friends, who after decades of unbridled generosity found themselves completely financially depleted with zero savings, insufficient retirement funds, surrounded by people who only showed up when they needed something and who mysteriously disappeared the moment they themselves needed support. I understood that this was not a curse of fate or personal bad luck, but the direct result of a lack of knowledge about a fundamental principle that our Jewish tradition calls the sacred protection of prosperity. In ancient Jewish wisdom, there is a deep understanding that spiritual protection and financial abundance are intrinsically connected, like two faces of the same sacred coin. Those who can identify and protect themselves from the destructive influences in their lives find that their ability to prosper multiplies exponentially, not by magic or coincidence, but because they can finally conserve and properly direct the vital energy that was once constantly drained by parasitic relationships and situations that sucked their resources without offering anything in return. Let me share the story that made me understand the urgency of this teaching. Martha, 52, a nursing assistant I met 2 years ago, when she sought spiritual guidance in a state of financial and emotional desperation. Martha had dedicated 30 years of her life caring for patients at the community hospital, always recognized by her colleagues as a dedicated professional and by her family as the good soul who never refused to help anyone. Over these 3 decades, Martha lent over $50,000 to various relatives. Brothers-in-law who promised to open prosperous businesses, but who mysteriously went bankrupt in a few months. Nephews for whom she paid expensive private college tuitions and who simply cut contact with her after graduating. Elderly parents who received a generous monthly allowance but who spent the money on superfluous things while complaining that the amount was insufficient. When Martha turned 50, a medical emergency revealed the tragic dimension of her misguided generosity. She needed a surgical procedure that would cost $15,000, an amount she couldn't gather because she didn't have a single penny saved for emergencies. Her retirement, when it came, would be insufficient to maintain the basic dignity that a person of her age and dedication deserved. The most devastating part was discovering that the very people for whom she had sacrificed her financial future simply disappeared when she needed help. The brothers-in-law claimed to be going through temporary difficulties. The nephews didn't even reply to her messages, and her parents suggested she get a loan from the bank because that's what bank loans are for. Martha cried in my office and said something that marked me deeply. Rabbi, was I too selfish during my life for helping others so much that I forgot about myself? Is the Eternal punishing me for some mistake I made? I held her trembling hands and replied with all the firmness I could muster. My daughter, you were not selfish. You were misguided by a culture that confuses generosity with self-destruction. The Eternal is not punishing you. He is trying to awaken your conscience to a truth you have not yet learned. You were cruel to yourself when you allowed others to decide the fate of your financial future. It was at this moment that I understood the urgency of teaching people like Martha the ancestral knowledge about spiritual protection that our tradition has preserved for millennia. In Jewish wisdom, there is a concept called gevel, which means sacred boundary, a divine frontier that must be respected and maintained to preserve our ability to prosper genuinely and truly help those who deserve our generosity. This concept is directly connected to the specific psalm I will reveal today, a prayer that, when understood and recited with the correct intention, activates a spiritual protection that automatically repels people whose intentions toward us are not pure. Many people confuse the word tzedakah with Christian charity, but in the original Jewish tradition, Tzedakah means justice, balance, sustainability. To give justly does not mean to give to anyone who shows up with a touching story, but to give in a way that preserves our own ability to continue giving over time. When we impoverish ourselves by helping others indiscriminately, we lose our ability to truly help and become an additional burden on society, violating the fundamental principle that we must first fill our own cup to then allow it to naturally overflow to others. The protective psalm I am going to teach is not just a prayer. It is an ancestral key that unlocks the divine prosperity that was being blocked by negative influences. During 40 years of observing and advising people in financial difficulty, I discovered an infallible pattern. Those who drain our energy and resources have an almost supernatural ability to identify people who are too kind to set boundaries. They do not seek out people who are also in difficulty. They do not approach those who have already shown they have clear boundaries. They have a special radar that detects who will sacrifice their own security so as not to appear insensitive, who was taught from childhood that questioning requests for help is a sign of a hard heart. This discovery led me to understand that we need an active, not passive, spiritual protection against these destructive influences. The psalm I am about to reveal creates exactly this protection, establishing an energy field around us that automatically repels people whose intentions are not pure, while at the same time attracting genuine opportunities for prosperity and relationships that contribute to our spiritual and material growth. The hidden rule I discovered after decades of study and that I will share with you today is called the Circle of Prosperity Protection, an ancestral principle based on the specific psalm I will reveal, which works in a way that may seem mysterious at first, but becomes crystal clear when we understand the spiritual laws that govern financial energy. When we establish sacred boundaries using this ancient protection, the people in our lives who are only there to drain our energy and financial resources naturally begin to distance themselves, while those who genuinely deserve our help and contribute to our spiritual and material growth remain and multiply in our lives. This rule has remained hidden for generations because it was purposely distorted by those who benefit from the uncontrolled generosity of good people like you. Our culture has created a romantic narrative where setting boundaries is seen as selfishness, when in reality it is an act of divine wisdom that allows us to be truly useful to the world without destroying ourselves in the process. The ancient sages knew this truth deeply, and that is why they created specific spiritual safeguards to protect the generous from the exploiters. Let me tell you about Robert, 49, a talented carpenter I met last year when he sought guidance because his kindness was literally destroying his financial life. Robert had learned the craft from his father, and for 20 years had built custom furniture, always recognized for the impeccable quality of his work and for his artisanal skill that few possessed in our region. However, Robert never managed to price his services adequately because there was always someone close asking for a special discount, family favors, or installment plans that they promised to pay, but never honored. For 2 decades, Robert worked more hours than any salaried employee, often 16 hours a day, including weekends, but earned less than minimum wage because his kindness had become a weakness, systematically exploited by people who discovered they could take advantage of his inability to say no. His workshop was run down, his tools urgently needed replacement. His hands were calloused and his back ached from so much time spent bent over poorly paid pieces, while the friends who benefited from his discounts never referred a single client who would pay a fair price. When Robert came to me, he said, with a deep bitterness that touched my heart, "Rabbi, I work harder than anyone I know, but it seems the more I work, the poorer I get. My wife is losing patience with me, my children need things I can't buy, and I don't know how to get out of this trap I've created for myself." Robert had discovered firsthand a devastating truth that I want you to understand before you go through the same suffering. Our kindness had become a resource that others considered inexhaustible and free. The people who exploited Robert did not see his generosity as a sacrifice on his part, as a choice he made by renouncing something important for himself and his family, but as a natural characteristic of his, like the color of his eyes or the tone of his voice, something that simply existed and was available whenever they needed it. Robert always figures something out. I know I can count on him. He's good with wood and he's a good guy. He won't charge me much because we know each other. These seemingly innocent phrases are actually extremely dangerous because they transform our ability to help into a permanent obligation that does not take into account our real situation, our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future. It was by observing cases like Robert's and Martha's that I understood the urgent need to teach the protective psalm that our ancestors preserved for exactly these situations. This psalm is not just a prayer of protection, it is a spiritual technology that reconfigures our personal energy in a way that automatically repels people with exploitative intentions, while at the same time magnetizing genuine opportunities for prosperity and relationships based on authentic reciprocity. In the Jewish tradition, we understand that everything in the universe operates through specific energetic laws, and money is no exception. When we allow our financial energy to be constantly drained by people who do not reciprocate or show genuine gratitude, we create a magnetic field of scarcity around us that attracts even more situations of loss and exploitation. The protective psalm acts as an energetic shield that interrupts this vicious cycle and reestablishes our connection with divine abundance. The specific psalm I will reveal is Psalm 121, but not in the superficial way most people know it. There is a particular way to recite it, a specific timing, and a directed intention that activates its maximum protection against negative financial influences. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. This is not just a statement of faith. It is an energetic reprogramming that reestablishes our direct connection with the source of prosperity, completely bypassing the people who have stood between us and our natural abundance. When Robert learned to apply this psalm correctly, combined with the practical techniques I will teach, his life was completely transformed in 40 days. He implemented what I call the ritual of one's own cup, where every morning, before any social interaction or financial decision, he would recite the protective psalm while holding a glass of water, visualizing a golden barrier of protection around himself, and then drink the water as a seal of this protection for the entire day. This seemingly simple practice created such a powerful, energetic shift that the people who used to exploit his kindness naturally began to look for other, easier targets. In parallel, Robert learned the test of the 3 sacred questions that must be applied whenever someone requests work at a discount or with special conditions. First question he would ask himself mentally: has this person ever helped me when I needed something? Second question: will accepting these conditions leave me in a vulnerable financial situation or harm my family? Third question: does this person show genuine gratitude for previous favors I have done for them? Robert discovered that only when at least 2 of the 3 answers were positive should he accept the work under special conditions. Otherwise, he would recite the psalm mentally and give a gentle but absolutely firm refusal. The transformation was impressive to observe. In a few months, Robert not only managed to reprice his services to fair values, but he also began to attract clients who truly valued his work and paid promptly, without questioning his prices. His workshop was renovated, his tools replaced with professional equipment, and for the first time in 20 years, he was able to take a vacation with his family without worrying about money. More importantly, Robert regained his self-esteem and professional dignity, understanding that charging a fair price for quality work is not greed, it is spiritual justice. The fundamental principle that Robert learned, and that I want you to understand deeply, is that the protective psalm not only wards off negative people, but also elevates our personal energy to a frequency that attracts authentic prosperity. When we stop being an easy source of resources for emotional and financial parasites, our energy automatically rises, and we begin to magnetize people who see our true value and are willing to contribute to our mutual prosperity. This is not magic. It is a fundamental spiritual law that governs all human interactions and that our ancestors understood perfectly. The practical application of Psalm 121 as financial protection requires a specific methodology that I have developed over decades of observing how this ancestral prayer concretely transforms people's reality. It is not enough to simply recite the words. It is necessary to deeply understand the spiritual technology behind this protection and implement the complementary practices that exponentially amplify its effects. Today I will teach you exactly how to do this, step by step, so that you can experience in your own life the same transformation that Robert, Martha, and hundreds of other people have achieved. The first fundamental element is what I call the weekly financial Shabbat, a sacred period of 8 hours per week, where no financial decisions are made, No help is given, no money is moved, creating a sacred temporal space where your mind reconnects with divine prosperity and completely detoxifies from the social pressure to constantly give. During this period, which should always be on the same day and at the same time each week to create a consistent spiritual rhythm, the only permitted activity is the contemplative recitation of Psalm 121 and deep reflection on the relationships that truly nourish your soul versus those that only drain your resources. During the financial Shabbat, you must sit in a quiet place with a notebook and a pen and perform what I call the mapping of the energy circle. List all the people who have asked for financial help in the last 2 years and mark next to each name how many times these people have offered help back to you, whether financial, emotional, or practical. This seemingly simple exercise creates a clear and often shocking visualization of the parasitic relationships that are draining your vital energy. You will discover that a small group of people is responsible for most of your financial losses, and that these same people are never available when you need any kind of support. After identifying these patterns, you will implement the technique of the envelope of protection, a practical strategy that works in conjunction with the spiritual power of the psalm. At the beginning of each month, set aside a specific amount exclusively for helping others, but with a strict and unbreakable rule. When this money runs out, no additional help is given until the next month, no matter who asks, what sob story they tell, or how much they try to guilt-trip you. And whenever someone insists after your polite refusal, you must recite Psalm 121 silently to strengthen your resolve to maintain the established boundary. The envelope of protection technique is revolutionary because it creates a physical and spiritual barrier between your generosity and your financial security. Inside the envelope, you can be generous without guilt. Outside the envelope, you are spiritually protected against emotional manipulation. This clear division eliminates the constant anxiety of not knowing where your limits are and allows you to sleep peacefully knowing that your generosity will not compromise your stability or your future. Let me share how this methodology transformed the life of Carol, 60, a widow who received a life insurance policy of $200,000 after her husband's death, and who, in 2 years, had lost $140,000 helping adult children, sons-in-law, daughters-in-law, in-laws, and even neighbors with their constant financial emergencies. Carol came to me in a state of panic because she realized that at the rate she was losing money, in another year she would be completely without reserves, depending solely on an insufficient retirement income to maintain the standard of living she had with her husband. When Carol implemented the financial Shabbat and performed her first mapping of the energy circle, she discovered a devastating reality. In 2 years, 17 different people had asked her for financial help, totaling the $140,000 lost. But when she analyzed how many times these people had offered any kind of help in return, the number was absolute zero. Not even a plate of food, a visit when she was sick, or a call to see how she was coping with her grief. Carol realized she had become a human ATM for people who saw her generosity as an inexhaustible resource. From the moment Carol began to recite Psalm 121 every morning and implemented the envelope of protection with $500 a month for aid, her life completely transformed. In the first few days, there was intense resistance and emotional pressure from those who were accustomed to having unrestricted access to her resources. Adult children used emotional blackmail. In-laws tried manipulation through other family members. Neighbors spread malicious comments about her becoming selfish after being widowed. But Carol stood firm, reciting the psalm whenever she felt her determination waver. Within 3 months, something extraordinary happened. The people who were in her life only to drain her resources naturally began to drift away and look for other sources of easy money. At the same time, Carol began to receive invitations to genuine social activities. People began to show real interest in her emotional well-being, and unexpected opportunities arose to increase her income through work compatible with her age and experience. Carol understood that the psalm not only protected against toxic people, but also unblocked channels of prosperity that had been obstructed by parasitic relationships. The next level of the methodology involves what I call the 40-day challenge of sacred protection, a period of spiritual and financial purification during which you commit to reciting Psalm 121 every morning upon waking and every night before sleeping. while gradually implementing all the techniques I am teaching. During these 40 days, you will also practice the fast from favors, where you grant no financial favors to anyone, using this powerful phrase whenever pressed. I am in a period of spiritual and financial reorganization and cannot help right now, but I can pray for you. This response is spiritually powerful because it offers something genuinely valuable: prayer, while keeping your financial boundary intact. You will quickly discover that this phrase immediately reveals who truly cares about your spiritual well-being and who is just interested in your material resources. People who respond with anger, manipulation, or disrespect to this offer of prayer clearly show their true intentions. During the 40-day challenge, you should keep a spiritual journal where you daily note 3 observations: which people moved away from you during the day, what positive opportunities appeared, and how you felt emotionally while maintaining your boundaries. This journal will become a powerful testament to the transformation that the protective psalm brings to your life, concretely documenting how spiritual protection translates into real material changes. The recitation of Psalm 121 should be done with specific intention and directed visualization. As you pronounce, "I lift up my eyes to the mountains, where does my help come from?" Visualize a golden light descending from the heavens and completely enveloping your body like a protective shield. When you say, "My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth," feel this protection solidifying around you, creating an impenetrable barrier against all influences that try to drain your energy or resources. This is not fantasy. It is a real spiritual technology that programs your subconscious to automatically recognize and repel parasitic energies. The final result of this complete methodology is not just protection against toxic people, but a complete transformation of your financial and emotional reality. You will discover that when you stop being an easy source of resources for exploiters, your energy rises to a frequency that magnetizes genuine prosperity and relationships based on authentic reciprocity, where giving becomes a joy and not a sacrifice that impoverishes and resents. The deepest transformation I have witnessed over 40 years of teaching this ancestral wisdom occurs when we understand that Psalm 121 is not just a protection against toxic people, but a master key that unlocks our direct connection with the divine abundance that has always been available to us, but was blocked by negative influences that made us believe our security depended on pleasing everyone and never setting boundaries. This final revelation I am going to share today will forever change your understanding of spiritual prosperity and financial dignity. During these decades of observing and guiding thousands of people, I discovered a fascinating pattern. Those who consistently apply the protective psalm for 40 days not only manage to rid themselves of parasitic relationships, but also experience what I call the prosperity multiplication effect, where genuine opportunities for financial growth begin to appear almost miraculously. This happens because when our energy stops being constantly drained by negative influences, it accumulates and potentiates, creating a magnetic field around us that attracts people and situations aligned with our spiritual and material elevation. Allow me to share the most extraordinary case I have witnessed. Frances, 57, a retired accountant who had lost almost all her financial reserves helping a drug-addicted daughter who constantly lied about being in recovery to get money, and an unemployed adult son who always made excuses for not looking for work, but never failed to show up with bills for his mother to pay. Frances came to me in a state of total desperation, with only $8,000 left from a retirement fund that should have been enough for her later years. When Frances rigorously implemented the entire methodology of the protective psalm, including the weekly financial Shabbat, the monthly envelope of protection, and the 40-day challenge, something extraordinary happened in her life. In the first 15 days, as expected, there was intense resistance from her children who were used to having unrestricted access to her resources. The daughter created dramatic scenes, threatened to kill herself, said her mother no longer loved her. The son tried manipulation through other relatives, showed up drunk at her house in the middle of the night demanding a loan. But Frances stood firm, reciting Psalm 121 whenever she felt her determination waver. On the 20th day of the challenge, something unexpected happened. An old colleague from work called Frances, offering a consulting project for a family business that needed to reorganize its tax books for the last 5 years. The job would pay $15,000 and could be done from home, at her own pace. On the 30th day, an elderly neighbor who had always respected her professional competence asked for help organizing his finances, and offered $2,000 a month for a few hours of work per week. On the 40th day, Frances received an unexpected call from an accounting firm offering her a partnership to specifically serve retirees who needed financial guidance. In 40 days, Frances not only tripled her monthly income, but also discovered a new calling that combined her professional experience with the purpose of helping people in her same age group. More importantly, her adult children, upon realizing they could no longer manipulate their mother financially, were forced to seek their own solutions for their lives. The daughter finally accepted admission to a government-subsidized recovery clinic, and the son got a job through a social program for professional resettlement. Frances told me something that perfectly summarizes the spiritual transformation that happens when we correctly apply the protective psalm. "Rabbi, I thought I was helping my children by giving them money, but I was actually preventing them from growing and finding their own strength. When I stopped being an obstacle disguised as help, they finally had the opportunity to become responsible people." This deep understanding reveals one of the most important truths of Jewish wisdom. Sometimes, the greatest help we can give someone is to allow them to face the consequences of their own choices. Psalm 121 works as a complete spiritual reprogramming that reestablishes our direct connection with the source of prosperity, bypassing all the people and situations that have stood between us and our natural abundance. When we recite, "He will not let your foot slip, he who watches over you will not slumber," we are activating a divine protection that goes far beyond simply warding off negative people. We are declaring our total trust in divine provision and our willingness to receive abundance through clean and dignified channels. The advanced application of this methodology includes what I call spiritual release scripts, specific phrases to be used when people try to break your newly established boundaries. When someone insists after you have said no to a request for financial help, use exactly these words. "I understand your need, but my current situation does not allow me to help in that way. I can pray for the Eternal to open other paths for you." This response is spiritually powerful because it acknowledges the person's need without taking responsibility for solving it, redirecting the expectation to the true source of all provision. For situations of intense family pressure, use this script. "I love our family, and that is why I need to make choices that preserve my ability to be present for everyone in the long run. Compromising my financial security wouldn't truly help anyone." This phrase disarms emotional blackmail because it frames your boundaries as an act of love, not selfishness. The process of complete transformation through the protective psalm culminates with what I call the ceremony of commitment to oneself, a personal ritual to be performed after the initial 40 days. You should write a letter to yourself acknowledging all the financial and emotional suffering you have gone through for not having adequate boundaries, forgiving yourself for allowing others to exploit your kindness, and solemnly committing to maintain the sacred boundaries you have learned, not out of selfishness, but out of self-love and spiritual responsibility. This letter should include the phrase, "I commit before the Eternal to be a responsible guardian of the resources He has entrusted to my care, using them with wisdom for my well-being, that of my family, and to truly help those who deserve my generosity through their actions and gratitude." Keep this letter in a sacred place and reread it whenever you feel your determination waver. I want you to understand that applying Psalm 121 as financial protection is not just a self-defense technique. It is an act of deep faith in divine provision and a declaration that you deserve prosperity and dignity. When you commit to this transformation, you are not just changing your financial situation, you are restoring your connection with the sacred purpose for which you were created, to be a blessing in the world, through your balanced and sustainable prosperity. I want you to write in the comments right now what your current financial situation is and publicly commit to implementing this methodology for the next 40 days. This public commitment creates a spiritual accountability that amplifies the power of the psalm and accelerates your transformation. Repeat this final prayer with me. Eternal, source of all prosperity, I accept your protection through Psalm 121, and I commit to being a responsible guardian of the resources you entrust to my care. May my cup always be full first, so that my overflow may truly nourish those who deserve my generosity. Amen. From today on, you are no longer a victim of your own kindness. You are a protected and prosperous channel of divine abundance.